Hmm. Uh, huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Campfire Clues, Cryptid Clues. I am your host, Taylor Field, and we've got a good episode today. I'm excited to talk about this, but before we get into that, just a couple of plugs. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca. You can find our blogs and our postings, everything like that. And you can also find us on our Patreon. You can get early ad-free exclusive episodes there. And we're all on social media. You can find us on our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. If you want to say hi, you got anything you just want to talk about, share with us, let us know what's going on. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So today's topic that I wanted to just kind of like sneak around into was mermaids. And I mentioned this last week that, getting more into the underwater aspect of things is just something that fascinates me. And mermaids in particular, when you hear that term, you think, straight up body of a woman, body of a man, lower half of, fins, everything like that. But you think the upper part is going to be spot on like the movie representation. It's just got that kind of narrative attached to it. The woman, just the long hair, everything like that. And I wanted to use this as an episode to kind of clear the air a little bit in that, because at least clear the air from my perspective, because I think it's very different. So I have a specific experience from 1967, and this one is actually close to home, where me and Ruben are from, British Columbia, Canada. So again, 1967, I will read it off here. This story basically consists of a ferry filled with tourists. Basically, all had spotted a blonde-haired mermaid sitting topless on a beach, eating a fish. I believe it was a salmon, and enjoying the waves basically splashing on her. One of the witnesses had mentioned that she was very attractive. They could actually pinpoint dimples on her. And there was actually a photo taken of this event, which shows a blondish woman with the lower half of a sea creature. So the similar incident actually happened later that week when a mermaid was spotted again. But by the time, there were plenty of skeptics who didn't believe that she was real. There were individuals that financed, I think, rewards like $25,000 to capture the mermaid and everything like that. And eventually it just kind of simmered down and nothing came out of it. Now, again, like I said before, my take on this is if you're going to see a mermaid, it's not going to look at all human. And when I say human, I mean the stereotypical, you go to the mall, get your hair done, looking fabulous kind of thing. It's not going to look anything like a human Homo Sapien would on that front. It's going to look like it's from the ocean. And not to say it's not going to have human attributes like, eyes, hands, nose, everything like that. I think it very well could, but the luscious hair, I don't think so. It's going to have adapted to its environment. I think that's the key component here. And just looking into a few different things, like my sister, for example, she was so big into mermaids, and she was someone that actually made me think, okay, there's the ocean. What am I doing just looking into Bigfoot, looking into Dogman? There's so much more going on out here. And that was a few years ago. She showed me a whole bunch of different things and got me really into this whole wave of underwater mystery. And when I was really digging into it, finding clips of underwater submarines off of oil rigs and seeing mysterious things swimming around in the dark, or the odd hand just kind of being placed on top of the windshield of these submarines in front of the camera, that really that sold me. Again, it's just like Bigfoot footage, some of these things could be fake. Absolutely, I can't just take everything and run with it, but there's some things when you look at, I would even go as far as certain organizations publishing certain things, certain findings, and then it just being kind of disregarded and just flatlined. And not specifically by individuals, but more prominent individual figures from government parties. And that's something I find really interesting as well. And where I'm kind of going with that is, I'll get to it later, but I wanted to just kind of go about into more like a cover-up part of that aspect later on. But I think it's worth noting there are a select few interesting documentaries that you can find and you should definitely watch. There's one, Mermaids, The Body Found. Check it out. I mean, you can find it on YouTube. And again, you can take it with a grain of salt, but it's really fascinating just to see this information kind of brought to light. So certain things that many people just don't really take into account. Again, a lot of the footage is obviously kind of like, I wouldn't say all of it is authentic. A lot of it is reenacted and everything like that. But you have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration just doing select individuals of that organization doing research and looking into these things, and a lot of it's just being kind of, snubbed, and the information is just being kind of flatlined, put in its place. And let that be known, coming from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they have announced there's no evidence to actually support mermaids are real. I'm not saying that, backing 100% that they are real. In my own personal opinion, I feel like they are, but in a very different light. So what really would these things be? There's so many like fishermen and parties out there that have their own research and their own tales of what these things could be. And when you kind of go into it and look at the history, there's many sightings that pop up, all around the world. Zimbabwe, even the Middle Ages, they're populating and story and sightings and everything like that. It's like fascinating. But what are they? Where do they come from? People talk about Bigfoot and the origins of that. I mean, is it like the missing link? Is it something that stems from humanity's past or something like that? I think it's very plausible that this is something, again, that stems from humanity's past. And there's many theories on that. Looking into, let's say, Aquatic Ape Theory, which, again, I know is a very controversial thing. And if you have a select kind of mindset on how you see all these things, maybe this might not be the kind of discussion I'll have, for you today. But if you do tune into this and you just kind of bear that open mind, then I'm hoping I can kind of just bring some interesting light to this kind of topic. Now, as controversial as the Aquatic Ape Theory is, I really do enjoy always kind of diving back into it and reading into it. So the foundation of that is where we came from, or a part of where we came from other, in comparison to terrestrial animals. When it comes to water, according to this theory, it's because there was a time when early humans spent most of the time in the ocean, and our developments that separate us from other land animals is a result of this, biological history from that period of time, being in the ocean, the water, everything. A couple of examples of this in our present-day species: we can control our breathing very similarly to marine mammals, and we can hold our breath longer than any land animals. I believe the record was actually being almost 20 minutes. Additionally, our body's spine is more flexible in comparison to other apes. And we have the whole partial webbing formation between our fingers and toes that apes don't have. Again, these attributes showcase, a water environment, so why do we have them? This is, of course, all theoretical, but it's something that's always fascinated me. Whenever I was younger, I'd go to the pool, I'd be like, it's cool, I got these webbing between my fingers, and, not everyone else, like ape-wise, have that. When your hands are underwater for a long time, they really get grippy. Like, when you walk on the flooring in pools, they're very textured to keep your grip so you don't slip. And when you have your hands in the water for a long period of time, pull your hands out, it's almost like your hands become that texture almost. And that's my own kind of observation. I always found fascinating. Like, wow, they get more textured, and I can grip things so much better. Like, it's fascinating. It's like a superpower. And that's something that I always will just kind of find fascinating with this theory. It just blows my mind. So if we were to go millions of years ago, let's say 6 million, give or take, the Earth is obviously changing at a crazy level. There's volcanoes, eruptions, and earthquakes out the wazoo. So you have this scenario where, let's say, select species make bold changes in their trajectory. And I learned this from actually one of these documentaries I was watching, where you have a branch of bears branching out, deciding to go into the water, and they eventually turn into polar bears. And they have, in comparison to other bears, actual webbing on their paws. They have the ability to hold their breath and just be swimming around. And that's, as they said in this documentary, that's us witnessing evolution. And it's just absolutely brilliant. So let's use that as an example. You have some of maybe our ancestors going out to sea and some staying on land. This is me using a basic explanation, though, to state that we are distantly related to such underwater cryptids. Again, however, this may not be the case. On that front of us actually being related or not, I mean, there's over, I think, 15 discovered human species that have walked on this planet. But before we get into that, just going to jump to a quick ad break, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. So on this topic of this species a long time ago, kind of just making this jump in trajectory, like I said with the polar bear, you have this species that's seeing, okay, there is more food out there in the water, and we're going to go out there and we're going to get it. We're going to just kind of get more used to it and get stuck with it. And then it's the same thing with any species. You have some that are going to pull more into inland territory, and some that are going to branch out and break through barriers. That's what humanity is doing now. We're pushing into space. We're pushing into new realms of exploration, everything like that. It's what species do, and you adapt to those environments. Humanity is at a point where we can use our technology to allow us to not necessarily evolve any further, but adapt to everything. Whereas that wasn't the case back a few million years ago. To adapt, you evolved. And I believe that's what these beings did. Now, on the topic of different human species, I have a list that I compiled of the 15 different types. We have Homo I hope I'm pronouncing all these names right. If you are an expert on these, let me know, and I apologize very much. So, Homo Sapiens, it's a badass name. Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, Homo rudolfensis, Homo antecessor, Homo cyprinensis, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo rhodesiensis, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo sapiens, and now this is a different version because it was labeled as Idaltu, which is an extinct subspecies of Homo sapiens, Homo Floresiensis, which are actually labeled as being hobbits, standing at about 3.5 feet tall, Denisova hominin, the Red Deer Cave people. This is interesting because the bones that were actually discovered in China and dated to be about 14,500 years old. Homo sapiens, then. There's a Capus out there, which again is us. So you have all these different human species. It's just absolutely fascinating. Most of them are extinct. Now, if we look at our history, the Homo sapiens may be the last human species on Earth. But again, if we look at our history, we weren't the first. Within a few thousand years of our arrival, Neanderthals actually began to vanish. They were going extinct. However, there are actual traces of Neanderthal DNA in some Eurasian people that prove that they didn't just go extinct, but there was some, interesting relations kind of going on back then. And it just kind of like mixed around the DNA a little bit. And this, again, is represented as other cultures around the world, like Australia and Asia. And I think that just kind of goes to show just a mingle of DNA. And it just kind of adds to the whole fact, in my opinion at least, that nature was just breaking barriers and just growing and just kind of evolving. And it was a way for, even though those other species are extinct, a way for that legacy to kind of carry on further with the evolving Homo sapien species that was dominating this planet, basically. Now, I'm not saying Homo sapiens ancestors are the ones specifically that went off into the water, but you look at all these different species, one of them very well could have just made that transition. They could have thought, hey, these Homo sapiens kind of suck, and they're just kind of like too smart and fighting around and just kind of like pushing us out of our territory, so we're just gonna kind of go off into the water. I mean, who knows? I mean, again, all these different, I'm not an expert, but all these different species of humans all could have stemmed from one original ancestor tribe of human form that existed a long time ago, and that's where you could have had your actual branch, because this kind of evolution probably isn't not a very recent thing. It's just, I don't know how far back our human history really goes with these, and to have something evolve, it would have to be millions of years. Like, it would be a long time to see this kind of transition, as for human beings at least, to kind of go from land faring to underwater. Not the first time this has happened, however. As I mentioned with the polar bear, people debate on this, but you see it with whales, more so in the sense of what they're related to and everything like that, prehistoric whales and stuff. You can do the research into it. It's a very fascinating thing to kind of just study and look into. I'm obsessed with it. But it would have to be such an old dated thing, a real long ancient ancestor that would have been going into the water to make this transition. Yeah, it just blows my mind. Back on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they've conducted some interesting studies. And again, I'm pulling from some of these documentaries I've dived into because it's just crazy stuff. There are many sonar incidents. Again, whales are beaching everywhere, and it's crazy. It makes you wonder what is going on. Sound technology is definitely nothing new. It is something that's been around for a while. I've not heard it myself, but I'm aware of such a thing. And I can bet your bottom dollar the Navy is using it for whatever means, just testing it at least, and certain tests have resulted in mass beachings of whales and everything like that, and it's absolutely saddening to see that. But what else do you find out there aside from just whales? There are certain things that might pop up that are more humanoid than aquatic mammal, and that's where it gets kind of dicey and a little interesting. This administration has looked into communications. They have picked up different chatter where it's made them think, maybe it's a porpoise, and it turns out, hey, that's not really a porpoise. It's something talking to porpoises, but it kind of sets them on the direction like, okay, we're looking for a porpoise. But then you kind of connect the dots and think, okay, we're actually finding something else here that's communicating. And again, it just adds with many unrecognizable and unknown bodies just washing up ashore. And those kind of things too. Cotton trawling nets. Many are labeled as hoaxes and such, which is fine. It's not hard to piece together a fake mermaid body and just kind of make everyone think it's real. I mean, I'm sure that was kind of the go-to thing back in the day. But it doesn't disregard the level of frequent sightings made by individuals on beaches, though, and even companies that are deep-sea subbing off oil rigs and such. I mean, there's some crazy things going on, especially where you find fish that have spears and primitive tools jabbed in them. It's fascinating. Could that be a hoax? It all could be a hoax, but I say this. I say it to my family. I say it to my friends. Out of 99% of all these occurrences, they could all be hoaxes, but you can't deny that 1%, or even, let's go further, that 99.998%. Can't deny that 0.0001% that exists, that there's a chance that this could have credibility, or that is a real actual physical like manta ray like tip that's jabbed into the front of like a shark or something that is actually harvested by something underwater. I think it's important that people understand, again, like I said at the beginning, you're not dealing with humanoid looking woman, man, typical coming out of the mall styled beauty model with flippers at the end of their body. You're dealing with something that is adapted and evolved over years and years and years and millions of years. Just to become the ultimate creature of its surroundings. This is something that I look at as these other human species that might have kind of branched off to become pale walkers or even underground humanoid entities living in those cave network systems that I talked about. There's so much possibility of evolution and branching that people forget. Like day-to-day people forget that we are not the only human species that ever walked on this planet. And that's crazy. I mean, you think, oh, we're just, we're the human beings, we're that, we're this. But it's fascinating to just ponder the thought that we are not the first ones, but we are, at this point, maybe not even the last ones either. When you look at the ocean, there's just 5% of the Earth's oceans that have actually been explored and charted. And I was actually tuning into some interesting videos of these people talking about the fact that how do we actually log the Earth of there only being 5% of the ocean explored? That means we know what that full percentage is. Maybe there's some fandangled math that I'm not really picking up on that, but how do they actually calculate that based on what? I truly feel like there's a lot more of the ocean that has been explored, and it has been marked, quarantined off in certain areas and aspects. And maybe, you have such sonar weapons that are just kind of beaching things, and maybe they're trying to just kill. Maybe you're dealing with something that's trying to become human beings want to be the most prominent advanced thing on the planet. You don't like competition. That's my perspective. And you hear tales about these teams going out into the bush eliminating Bigfoot, and you got the Navy going off and playing with sonar, eliminating certain wildlife out in the water. It's scary, and I hope it's not true, because it's a form of genocide, really. You're dealing with intelligent life out there that may not be directly related to us, but shares the planet with us, and it's just crazy to think what the possibility and what the reality is out there on these things. But there's still so much more to go into on such a topic, and I'm probably going to get more into this with Ruben, but I just wanted to kind of get through the door here and just kind of relay a little bit of the information that I was researching about mermaids, because it's fascinating. It really, really is, and it's definitely worth diving into on your own, even looking in the information. So I think with that, though, I'm going to call it there. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, this is just kind of stepping through the door. I'm going to be back with Ruben talking well more in depth on mermaids and underwater cryptids and everything like that, because there's so much that we have to uncover. There's so many things down there, and I am actively looking for individuals that maybe they're scuba divers, or maybe they worked on some of these oil rigs, but they have seen some things down below and they're aware of some things, because something's not adding up. That's a big ocean, and there is a lot of hiding spots. So that's all I got. Remember, check us out on our website, CryptidClues.ca. Send us an email, CryptidClues@gmail.com, and you can find us on our social media channels as well. We have episodes dropping every Monday and Friday, and I'll be back on Monday with Ruben. So until next time, we'll see you soon. Stay safe.